What is well-being? According to Canadians, it is defined as the presence of the highest possible quality of life through a wide range of domains.
My name is Jenel Shaw. I'm the Executive Director of Arts AccessAbility Network Manitoba, or AANM. AANM was founded in 2008. Basically, a group of artists got together with disabilities and realized that there wasn't really anyone to advocate for them. And they thought it would be a great idea just to kind of network and to kind of support one another. So that's kind of the impetus of where the organization started from. And mainly, our goal is just to support professional deaf and disabled artists in all areas of the career, as well as to advocate for audiences and art workers who are deaf and or disabled. I thought it was a very interesting report. There was obviously, in my view, a glaring missed opportunity to speak about folks with disabilities. Partly is that the reason why is in 1994 there wasn't much information that was collected about folks with disabilities. That's something that still kind of continues to kind of be an issue. The Canadian statistics on people with disabilities is a really great resource to kind of learn more about that. But that was my biggest thing, was the lack of that kind of consideration for that demographic I thought was missing. But that being said, in terms of the leisure part of it, where it was speaking about how folks, there's been a drastic reduction in how much folks attend art events or those cultural events. I must say, I've only been in this position since 2019, and the amount of folks who come to our events and outreach has actually grown for us. And in fact, during the pandemic was a time when we really exploded and were more busy than other folks. For a variety of reasons. So first, we had already been doing hybrid in 2019 before the pandemic. We really wanted to get things online to make sure it's as accessible as possible. We have quite a few members who are homebound for a variety of reasons. So it was really important that we made that digital. So in that sense, we were already ahead of the game with everyone else. Another reason why it also exploded is because folks with disability have been living with poor health, isolation, for quite a long time. So we know how to handle the situations. We know how to connect with folks who are, not right next to us. So in that sense, we had a lot of organizations reaching out to us asking about how we do these online stuff. How do we connect with our members who are isolated? So that was really exciting. We had a lot of artists who were not working in their regular jobs, so they were able to apply for funding to focus on their art. So that was a big thing that started up again. And then of course, we had a lot of organizations reaching out to us to do anti-ableist work, because they had this time of period where it was a bit of downtime, a time to really kind of look at practices and see how we could improve those. It was very interesting in the fact that while other organizations were saying, our workload has really gone down and we're not producing as much, ours was almost the opposite, with almost doubling the amount of work we did. Yeah, it's absolutely essential. It's really interesting because we've done a few partnership with other organizations to do kind of residencies for artists. And so when we do those, we try to hire the facilitators as folks with disabilities and that sort of thing, and to have all their considerations taken. And the response we've gotten from our members who've gone through those programs is pretty interesting. One, that networking with their peers has greatly impacted their well-being. Just knowing that there's other folks out there in the same position, they're not by themselves, they're not just, that there's others who are dealing with these sort of situations, and being able to connect with those peers has been really life-changing for a lot of our artists, as well as because we try to have our facilitators be folks with disabilities, there's this immediate sense of you don't have to fight for what you need, right? You know that when you come to these, your accommodations will already be considered. We'll be asking you ahead of time, so it's not something that you have to fight for. So that's another way that we kind of facilitate that leisure and the relationship building within our community by providing a safe space for folks. Back in 2020, we held quite a few community consultations to build that audit. And the number one complaint that folks had was that when they go to arts and culture events, that people don't know the accessibility of the spaces, that they don't know if it's on street level, if there's a step. And so right immediately, if you're not even being considered, right, that immediately feels as though you're not welcome there, which is why we did the audit. So it's another way that places can be more inclusive and really welcoming and encouraging for the community to come out. If you post on your website, this is what our space is. Even if it's not accessible, we need that information more than we need about you being accessible. And so there's this additional barrier that folks with disabilities face when they try to access leisure and culture, is that accessibility side of it. So I would definitely encourage organizations to really take a look at their space, and not that they have to rebuild or anything like that, but just to give folks a really clear idea of what the space looks like accessibility-wise is really important. But it's just really amazing. All events are not only kind of beneficial for the deaf and disability community, but also for those who are not disabled. So, for example, our last Deaf and Disability Arts Festival, we had it at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. And one of the folks who was performing, her name is Sassy Wheels, and she utilizes a power wheelchair, and she's a burlesque dancer. And in the audience was a colleague of mine whose brother also had similar types of disabilities, but they had ended up in the institution because of the time that they were born. And so it was so cathartic and really touching for her to see this performance, to see what life can be now for folks with disabilities. In terms of disability art, over the last few years, especially since the pandemic, funding for disability arts has definitely gone up. And there's a bit more focus on disability art and the rights of folks with disabilities. So, for example, all the arts councils now offer payment for grant assistance. So if you wanted to apply for a grant, but you have these barriers, whether it's physical, mental, intellectual, you can now hire someone, and the arts organization, the arts councils will pay for that service. So that's a lovely way that we're being supported to kind of break some of those barriers. The arts councils also provide accessibility support on top of that. So if you're approved for your grant, you can apply for separate funding that will cover ASL, or perhaps you need an assistant, or anything that you need to do your project efficiently with your accommodations. And so that's also been a really lovely change versus having to take money out of the grant body itself to cover those costs. So it's been really, really encouraging that the Art Council specifically have really kind of stepped up and really tried to look at what they're funding and kind of rearrange funding to make it more accessible for a group that has been largely not as supported. And as a result for that, hasn't applied for as many grants because that support wasn't there. And so since I've started, I probably help with anywhere from 30 to 40 grant applications every year. So it's a lot, plus writing our own grants. But it's really important work, right? That's the main way that artists are paid for their work, is through grants or through exhibitions. I'd love to say it was through selling art, but unfortunately that's usually not the case. So it's been really encouraging that the government and the arts councils have really kind of been pushing for that accessibility side of things, and also that they've been reaching out to the deaf and disability community about these issues. Has been really nice, because it's something that we've advocated for, that, we know what we need. We live this every day. We can tell you what we need or what the right wording is. And the arts councils have been really great at reaching out to clarify with us and to confirm with us, which I find very encouraging. Another great thing is there's been a lot of new deaf and disability arts organizations that have started up in Winnipeg. So, for example, Sick and Twisted Theater with Debbie Patterson has started up in the last couple years. Neurohilarity with Adam Schwartz, who's a comedian with autism. I see you know him, is another one. We actually have enough deaf and disability organizations in Winnipeg now that we've started a deaf and disability organization meetup. We just started this last month, something that Adam had suggested we did. And so I've been helping him kind of organize all that. And so it's really exciting to see all these great organizations coming, establishing themselves. And now that we're able to kind of get together and support each other and tell each other what we're doing, so we're not kind of repeating what we're doing. And it's been really encouraging. Of course, there's still lots of work to do because folks continue to be discriminated against as a result of their disability, where the concern of it's going to be too difficult or too costly is something we artists continue to fight against. And but I see it going in a positive way, especially in Winnipeg. While we are launching our anti-ableist workshop at the end of June, we did run a few of them last year. And so we did that with about 42 arts workers in Winnipeg, with the entire Manitoba Arts Council staff. And the responses were really amazing. This is a lot of information that is public, but folks don't know about, right? And so it was really interesting to see people, how they related to the history of disability in Canada, and really be encouraged and excited and, ooh, maybe we can do this, and just thinking up these really cool ideas. And so it's so exciting to see that the Winnipeg arts community is really wanting to include the deaf and disability communities. So it's been encouraging, I think, on a whole. One thing that I think folks from the deaf and disability community would like others to know is that there are certain protocols when working with these communities, and that's really interesting stuff to know, and is really useful to know. And so, for example, one of the things is if you see someone in a wheelchair, never push their wheelchair or move them without their consent, which is something that actually happens quite often. And I've witnessed it quite a few times where folks will need to pass by or something like that, and they'll physically move them, and that's not something you would do to someone not in a wheelchair. If someone comes into your coffee shop with a service worker, speak to the individual, not to the service worker. Just little things like that. Or for the deaf community, right? If you're speaking through an interpreter, you don't look at the interpreter, you look at the person you're speaking with. So there's just certain things like that. And you can find out a lot of those through the internet. So for example, the Manitoba Cultural Society of the Deaf have a lot of really great resources on protocols for working with the deaf community. And then also when we launch our anti-ableist workshop for the arts, that's also a really great way to learn more information about how to work with different communities, as well as language. Language is also very important. So I would encourage people to be conscious of that. So for example, we would say someone has low vision. We wouldn't say they're vision impaired. That is a medical term. Of course, the individual is allowed to identify however they want. So they may change their mind. Another really important thing to know about the disability community is it was decided back in the 80s that if you want to be a part of the disability community, all you need to do is self-identify. And that's a result of all the medicalization and kind of stuff that the community has been through. So we would encourage you that if someone discloses they have a disability, just take their word for it. It tends not to be something that folks lie about. So that's another thing that I would encourage. And if you ever don't know what the right protocols are to work with them, the best thing to do is to ask. And it's really simple. You just ask and try to accommodate the best you can. And if that's something that you need help with, that's what Arts Accessibility is here to do. So reach out, and we're happy to kind of explain those protocols and kind of help folks through that process that might seem daunting if you've never kind of worked within the community, but it's not as daunting as you think. It's generally just treat everyone how you would want to be treated when it comes down to it.